So, welcome to my interview with Aran Patinkin. Is that the correct pronunciation?
It is.
Patinkin. Okay, so Aran...
It's Polish.
Polish, okay. I didn't know that. So, Aran lives here in Portugal, and I've known him for only several weeks, I think. He's a fascinating man with, in my opinion, lots of very interesting things to say and a great perspective on religion and the Bible. And he knows the Hebrew language extremely well. It's your first language, is that correct? Yeah. So
it's not my mother tongue,
right.
But it's my first language.
So am I right in thinking you're American or you're Israeli?
No,
or
I'm completely Israeli,
okay.
But my parents were born in Chicago. My grandparents were born in Ukraine and Poland.
Right, interesting mixture there.
Yeah.
So
I was born in Israel.
Okay.
And I knew to speak English and my parents at that time, today it's very different, at that time, part of being Zionist and building up Israel, I'm talking to you about 50s, 60s,
yeah.
was to speak only Hebrew.
Right.
So my parents were very insistent on speaking with us, the children of the family, in Hebrew.
Okay.
And among themselves, they spoke English, and when they didn't want us to understand, they spoke Yiddish.
Right. Very good.
But to us, they insisted on speaking Hebrew, and that was custom there. Today, it's different. Today, families, bilingual families, and people speak to their children in Israel in English. So they will inquire the most important language that runs the world today,
indeed.
And that will give them an edge when they grow up.
Yeah.
When I grew up, it was a completely different ballgame.
Yeah. So I have a feeling that you feel that Hebrew is a deeply, deeply significant language, and especially when it comes to religious and matters of God, that there's a lot of secrets hidden in the Hebrew language.
In all languages, there are secrets
hidden.
Yeah.
And
the English language is very rich with all sorts of, just to give you a simple example, you call present is also a gift and also present tense.
Yeah. That's a nice clue.
That's in English. That's a nice clue, and there are many of those. Thing and think are similar words, probably for a reason.
Yeah.
But the Hebrew, all of it is like that. Even a dog, in English a dog, there's no deep reason. It's just, it's been accustomed to call it a dog, as far as I know. And only that the reverse of dog is God, maybe that's something.
Perhaps.
But otherwise, in English, most of the choices of words is more or less arbitrary. But in Hebrew, a dog, it says, like a heart, ke-lev.
Wow, I like that, like a heart.
It's
It's very purposeful.
And now every word, because it's more ancient language, and when it was, I can't say invented, but when it was constructed, the mind was still, the human mind was a lot more innocent than ours. So everything was very intuitive, genuine. It all happened. That's why the Bible is such a deep, because it experienced the innocence of the first bang, the first Big Bang. We're totally detached from that today, completely. That's one of the major problems of humans today. They don't know why they're here.
Yeah.
Period.
When you talk about the first Big Bang, do you mean the
creation?
Yeah. Okay.
But the mental creation,
Yeah,
physical.
that's what I was getting at.
With the physical, you can go. I'm not going to get into that.
Creation
argument.
of our consciousness.
If there were dinosaurs or not, and all that,
Sure.
that's so childish. I don't find that interesting at all. But the Bible mostly deals with the mental evolution of the universal mind.
Yeah.
Has nothing to do with any of the organized religions. None of them.
Yeah.
Doesn't belong to the Jews or the Christians or Muslims or anyone. It belongs to the universe.
It's a text for every human being.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
That's
completely universal, completely psychological.
Yeah.
And national identity or politics is the last thing that concerns the Bible itself.
Yeah.
What religion does is a completely different thing. But none of them carry the spirit. None of the organized religions carry the true spirit of the Bible.
Yeah.
Which is quite a tragedy. Because it's not only that they don't understand the Bible, they stole it. You see, if I come in Israel, it's more customary for a non-religious person. I feel very religious, but I don't belong to any kind of organized religion.
Right.
So, but in Israel, there are a lot of people like me who are deeply interested in the Bible and do not belong to any kind of a religious politics organization.
Yeah.
But outside of Israel, it's very rare to find someone that just realizes that the Bible does not belong to religion.
Yes. Yeah.
But I'm using religion in two ways here, and it's because religion is just gathering of minds is the meaning of the word religion in English.
Yeah. Yeah.
But organized religion is tradition. Tradition is dead.
And essentially it serves in dividing people's minds. So it's really been turned upside down almost.
Now the funny thing is that a few hundred years ago in the Western world there was the Enlightenment days, and people realized the limitation of organized religion, and they invented science as an alternative to religion, which became today the most conservative tradition we have. Religion, it's a system of belief, and it's the most rigid and the most violent sometimes system of belief that exists today.
Yeah.
It's
usually
that should tell us so much about
something's wrong there. Something's wrong.
no, it's not that something is wrong, but that's how evolution of consciousness goes. It doesn't go in a straight line. It goes zigzags up. I believe upwards eventually, but
Yeah.
it zigzags like hell.
Yeah, very slowly.
And it starts and drops and it goes and it doesn't. It's not at all a straight line.
Can I ask you? Do you think that's governed by our choices, or do you think it's a divine will that we're evolving in this way?
If you mean by divine will that there's a God in the skies sitting on a cloud and concentrating that, obviously no, I didn't think you did. But if you think that there is something that governing it, I would say of course, and that thing that is governing it in the Bible told us don't name it, don't define it. For me, it's a very simple issue. If you have something that is limited, it cannot be limited unless it is inside an unlimited
Framework, yeah.
framework. This is simple. Do you follow
of course,
the?
Absolutely, yeah.
So nobody asked me. I mean, this is fundamental. You cannot. It could always be. So the question, if there is a God or isn't a God, it's a stupid question, because it's not. It's not for us even to consider, because our horizon, our thought horizon, imagination horizon, it's always stops somewhere.
Yeah.
But there's always an unknown behind it,
Always.
inherently.
Yeah.
So you want to call it God, fine. You want to call it infinity, that's okay with me too. And you can call it many names, or you can choose what the Bible suggests. Don't call it at all.
Yeah.
And so the main issue here is the level of abstraction and mental freedom that you allow yourself. This is the whole issue of. This is the issue that is described in the Exodus from Egypt.
Yes.
If we were talking about the Hebrew language, the word Egypt in Hebrew is Mitzrayim.
Mm-hmm.
Mitzrayim comes from the word, the linguistic root of tsar, which is narrow.
Narrow, okay.
So you're moving out from a narrow state of mind to mental freedom.
Yeah.
Passover or Easter or Pascha or whatever, it's the holiday of mental freedom.
Right. And is it named?
It says so, but people can be. You go to the Orthodox neighborhoods in Jerusalem, and people won't know what you're talking about. It says, "I have the laws, I have this, I have to follow this and do this and do this, and then it's good, and everything is good." And salvation will come.
Yeah.
Salvation is mental freedom. There's no other salvation.
Yeah.
So I personally don't need any of that. I don't need even Jesus, although I respect him and love him. But he wants to come, fine. I mean, it's no problem. But it's not. I'm not dependent on any mediator for mental freedom. And that's, if you ask me, that's the most important message of the Bible.
Yeah.
Because only when you have mental freedom, you can possibly imagine a different possibility.
Yeah. Think outside the box.
And and you can see in our times it's so obvious. I mean, you don't even have to say it. We're confronting a paradigm change, and that change can only happen when you loosen up.
Yeah, when you let go.
You let go.
Yeah.
It's simple stuff.
Yeah.
So a lot of the culture on all sides, religious, intellectual, philosophic, there are no great philosophers. There are a lot of scholars who know philosophy, but no.
What would you say the essence of philosophy is, in your eyes?
Finding out why I'm here.
Right. So, what is your perspective on why you are here on this planet, in this reality?
Well, I can only presume, because this is my life passion, to really take that question and really go as deep as possible. Yeah. And I found out that it's very difficult, although I've done a lot of work by myself and I've done work with others. It's very difficult to do that long term by yourself. Because when you are alone with yourself, even if you're the best meditator in the world, you eventually come to contradict yourself and come to mentally move on your personal bias. And we all do have biases. They vary, but it doesn't really matter if they vary or they don't. It's a bias.
Yeah.
And I found that the only way to really penetrate that question, and I've been doing that intensively for the last 10 years, is to create dialogue.
Yes.
And I think I've shared this with you, but the word for dialogue in Hebrew is shiach, siach. And the word for Messiah in Hebrew is Mashiach.
Yeah.
And ma is what? So put those two together and that tells you everything.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, it's perfectly all right if somebody... you see, if somebody mentally depends on the coming of the Messiah and imagining that it would be Jesus, it's possible. I don't know, but I don't need it.
Yeah.
Usually, people who do that for their own sake of security, and to create artificial hope. Actually, the most destructive word ever invented is hope.
Right.
Because it puts the hope in the future. And the hope, if there is hope, is here.
Yeah, absolutely.
This minute. And if it's in the future, it will never happen.
Yeah.
Because the future keeps on moving.
Yeah.
It's like
a carrot in front of a donkey.
Yeah, it doesn't help. I don't think that it is possible that some kind of persona, again, I don't care how you call it or identify it, will come and with a magic hit on the bell would change reality. It's just...
So can I ask you this question? Because
it's just not... I don't think it's in the cards.
Okay.
But the more we as humans, 2, 1, 10, 12, as many as you can gather, will awaken to the possibility of dialogue and to really have dialogue, you need mental freedom, and that means relationship. What we call relationship has very little to do with relationship.
I guess the desire, through the dialogue, the desire for mental freedom. So if you're using the dialogue with the intention, if you're not...
Only through dialogue you can see where you're hooked.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, when I speak to myself, let's be honest, I cheat myself.
Sure.
And I let things get out of...
let things slip a little bit.
Slip a little bit
by.
here and slip a little there. After 10 years of solitude, I'll be gone.
Right.
But if I have you, and you don't even have to say it, just by me speaking to you, I know that. Yeah, I've seen that. Then we're the whole notion that living or dead persona can teach me anything, and I'm waiting for him to explain me.
Yeah.
Oh, it worked for a while.
Yeah.
It did its job, but now it's completely irrelevant. There's no such thing.
So can I ask you this question?
You can see from all the greatest thinkers of the 20th century, this fact manifested itself so beautifully that it's mind-boggling.
Yeah.
See, people I consider great thinkers of the 20th century, Jiddu Krishnamurti, Gurdjieff, a few others of that caliber. None of them left any student that is worth reading. And they themselves testified that they didn't succeed. So Okay, I'll read another book and I'll learn another trick and I'll gather 100 people that believe that I'm the teacher. That will repeat itself.
Yeah. So, in your opinion, if someone wants to come close to God, if someone's heart is longing for a union with this force that we can't really explain, some call God, then for you is dialogue the essence of that, or is there something that when we're on our
That's dialogue.
Yeah.
Call it Messiah, call it God, call it... it doesn't matter how you call it.
And what about personal dialogue with that force? People who speak to God and they
There's no separation.
Mm-hmm.
It's not me speaking to that force. I am that force. That's what the non-dual, before that turned into a tradition, was about. But for me, a Hebrew-speaking person, to call the unity, the one, Yehovah, God, however you want to call it, in a negative way, non-dual, why not call it Hebrew?
Yeah.
Why use a negative way of describing a whole religious movement, which in its essence had validity, but it's... Do you see my point? Why call it non-dual? Why don't call it unity?
Yeah, exactly.
It's...
So I wanted to...
And then obviously, like all movements, I was part of a spiritual movement, and my friends, my brothers today, they're gone. They're still sticking to the tradition. Not even one, after the guru, the teacher, passed away, not even one carries what he brought about, and he was a remarkable man, but very little traces of it. I mean, there are traces of it, but not the significant one, not mental freedom. On the contrary, they say, oh, he spoke wisely, so now we lock that down and we cherish that and we don't let letters move away.
Yeah, exactly.
And God.
So when it comes to freedom of the heart, so we talk about mental freedom, what does that mean for you, the freedom of your heart, and how do you find that you experience the freedom of your heart?
I think you've experienced it. You've expressed it beautifully. I listen.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's listening, but truly listening is the closest you get.
Yeah.
And the most significant Jewish prayer is Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema is listen, Israel. God is one. God is God, and God is one.
Yeah.
And they say it 3-4 times a day.
Yeah. That's interesting because sound is a very...
And there are many. This is the most. You just say in Hebrew Shema Yisrael, and everybody knows exactly what you're talking about. People going into death camps were shouting it. But it's a very, and it's biblical and it's beautiful. It's Shema Yisrael. Yeah. And Israel is Yashar El. Yashar is honest. El. But the Bible does not, when Jacob is named Israel, the Bible says that the angel that was struggling with Jacob, which was Jacob's shadow, basically. If you want to speak about it in Jungian language, he told him, you fought against Sarim is ministers, against godly forces, and you won. That's why I call, which is also true. But if you just look at the word Yisrael and break it up with no, it's Yashar El. Yashar is honest, El is God. It's that's all there is. I mean, looking at our reality, nothing is going to change dramatically until we see where we're living. In the sense, we're living in a hell.
Yeah. And would you say it's a psychological?
People sit and say, "Oh, I want to be a good person, not to go to hell. Go to hell. You're in hell."
I guess separation from God
Yeah.
is hell.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the further away you go
Yeah.
from God,
Yeah.
and the deeper into hell you retreat.
Yeah.
So, do you, when you experience suffering, when you experience pain or sadness or grief, what is your instinctive response? If you experience something that you want to be free of, that how do I put this?
Let me try. Because of the culture we're living in, our tendency, the culture of self-help, is so dominant in our life that we can't even imagine anything else. But the Bible is not about self-help. Well, let's put it in this way. The Bible can do two things that are totally, that they're not on the same wavelength. It can put you in some kind of artificial order where you behave more or less humanly and don't murder everybody around you, which is our basic tendency. Even criticism, when the Bible says do not murder, it says basically do not criticize. By criticism, you murder a thought. And it doesn't matter if there's some human biological form that carries that thought. When you murder a thought, any frame of mind, that's murder.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah. So, I'm turning senile.
You're talking about self-help, the Bible.
The self-help. So if you choose that path, and that's what more Orthodox Jews do, yes, you live a life, very dull life spiritually, truly, although you're considered a spiritual man. But you don't murder everybody around you. You restrain yourself. It's a way to restrain yourself and make life livable.
Yeah.
Hell, but livable.
Right.
That's one. And it works fine. It really works well. I know many Orthodox families. It's beautiful to watch. 12 children, all well behaved. Everything. They live in, this is an apartment of 14 people. And you don't feel at all. And it's a wonderful sight. I have friends like that. I enjoy visiting them. I enjoy seeing that. I have a cousin like that. And he's a year older than me, and already has 40 or 50 grandchildren.
Goodness me.
And probably is on the way to having a great grandchildren sometime, not in the far distance.
Yeah.
Okay? And you see, but the truth, this is a function that as long as the transition does not happen, it just keeps things alive. It's a survival kit.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, and it doesn't contradict this at all, but it gives you a completely different, it's the most revolutionary, mind-boggling document that shows you an alternative, not an alternative that if I drink from a glass cup and then I drink it from a dew, I don't mix that with that. But a completely different mental game, completely different physical game.
Yeah.
To the atom level.
Yeah.
And which is inevitable.
For real transformation.
For world transformation.
Yeah.
that's what brought about this notion of world transformation, which is a very, very powerful thing.
So would you say the Bible is a book of transformation? Could you go as far as to say that?
Hebrew is to be transformed.
That's
The word Hebrew.
Of course. Yeah.
It's,
So how can someone get the most, in your opinion, the most from the Bible? How can they let themselves be transformed? Because a lot of people would say.
so I was getting to this. And,
Oh, sorry.
So we started this whole dialogue from the point of self-help. I'm just human, with all the Geschäft included, and with my fears, my loves, my dishonesty. I'm human,
Sure.
and the Bible deals with humans, not with saints.
That's right.
The Old Testament, the Talmud and the New Testament already deal. And my father once told me a very beautiful thing. He says, "From a perfect man, I have nothing to learn. From an imperfect man, there's plenty to learn. But Jesus was perfect. Hooray, fantastic. Okay, now what? Wait for his second coming, so he will ding on my head, and then I'll become perfect." Doesn't sound realistic to me. Maybe I cannot say it's totally impossible, but it doesn't seem to me that that's what God wants me to think.
Okay.
Because the worst thing about it takes the responsibility away from me.
Yeah.
And if there's one thing that God doesn't want me to do is to let go of my responsibility.
I understand that.
I think love and responsibility mean the same in Hebrew.
Right.
So it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I understand that. So why would the Bible focus so much?
Okay.
Yeah, on that.
So I'm getting where we're getting to. So I'm trying to be on this wavelength that I don't want to give suggestions to others.
Yeah.
I don't feel qualified.
Yeah, I understand.
I don't want to try to improve their life. Anytime I tried in the past to do that, it was total disaster, even with my children.
Right.
And it did tremendous damage.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to leave. And I don't think that the Bible is about self-improvement.
Mm-hmm.
The Bible is about transformation. And it's not transformation of a single person, it's transformation of all consciousness, which is one. I mean, if we take that and we honestly pursue the idea that consciousness is one, which we do, we have to realize that none of us can really, I mean, there are variations, all sorts of variations, but not significant ones. So what truly should happen, which we're trying to understand here, humbly understand, will happen to everyone or won't happen to anyone.
Right, I understand.
You know, so, I mean, if you want to dwell with self-help, fine. I mean, take it to the end of the road. What else can I say? I haven't, the most basic things in my personality, I haven't been able to change. Not even the way I brush my teeth. It's so, I mean, sometimes you succeed in changing here and there. And it gives you a lot of boost. So insignificant in my mind. What's really significant, and it's very difficult to get that across, what's truly significant is realizing what exactly, how our reality is constructed.
Yes.
The Hebrew word for that is merkava, murkav. You know Merkava and Kabbalah. Have you ever heard the term?
Merkaba. I've heard the Merkaba.
Yeah, that's the same word, but only
with a B.
the way English-speaking people
I mean,
mispronounce it.
Yeah, and it means
Those undeveloped English-speaking people.
And that word means, the translation of that word?
Now, you could either mystify that, which Kabbalists do today. Oh, Merkava, I've seen the Merkava. Oh, it goes from here to there and up and down. Full of rubbish. Or you can realize that's how this reality is constructed. Kabbalah, true Kabbalah, is not a book. Knowing the book from start to end with the details doesn't give you nothing,
Sure.
except a lot of rubbish in your head.
Yeah.
But today because we're become an ambitious, I want to transform, and then I will take my pals with me if they behave themselves well.
Yeah.
And if they don't, I'm in control. Goes nowhere. Absolutely nowhere. It's an unbelievably empty game.
Yeah. So if we're like, I think we're both the same, that transformation is really our focus, that there's a transformation happening and we're being asked to surrender to the transformation, to allow it to happen.
And to support it by dialogue. That's all we can do. And and you cannot force it, and you cannot.
So how does the Bible, what's the part of the Bible?
Anyone, just check history. Anyone, including Jesus, by the way. Jesus began as offering your other cheek. In 400 years, it became the most violent religion the world has ever known. Seriously, a lot more violent than Islam is today. A lot more. Oh, we're in Portugal. You should see how many people have been burned on this idiocy.
Yeah, I know.
It's unbelievable. The ground is saturated with blood over nonsense.
And would you say that's through a misunderstanding of the Bible?
If there was ever an understatement. The Bible is a book of peace.
Yeah.
Jesus always spoke about this peace. What happens afterwards? It's very simple to understand. People out of good intentions, they hear something that sounds good and they want to enforce it on reality.
Yes.
And then they're caught in their own trap because force does not give the result you anticipated. So you use more force. And that doesn't give the result, so you use more force until you become a mass murderer. It's people just don't realize the
It all has a root, doesn't it? It all has a root. If you get down to that very root of what makes you choose to exert control and use force, whereas you could avoid that. You could avoid that and choose to let go and give people their freedom. And so there's that choice to make right in the very core of our being, that it's so tempting to want to enforce something which we see as good and beneficial. I guess it's because we do care about other people, and we want to take responsibility for their soul.
I made a film that's called The Law of Good Intentions. Good intentions are so much more dangerous. And a lot of these evil things started from good intentions. People don't realize the dynamic. They're just, what really is shocking about us humans is how blind we are. To ourselves.
It's arrogance, essentially, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's,
ignorance as well.
But it's much more than that. It's blindness, truly blindness. And that's what makes us do.
Is that because we're afraid, do you think? Is that because at the very core we're deeply, deeply afraid and we don't really want to recognize something?
It's a lot more fundamental than that, but it has to be in the right context, because this reality, any reality, cannot exist with a certain level of limitation. We basically said that in different words before. To make a limitation, you have to lie. You have to be, you have,
I understand that.
okay, this is infinite and we are in this studio, this square. Okay? For us to operate in this square, we have to lie. We have to be blind to all the rest.
Yeah, I understand that.
So this is, you have to realize that it's inherent to this reality. Basically, there cannot be a Israel in this reality.
Right.
Just from the structural point of view.
Yeah.
And true dialogue deals with structure, doesn't deal with content.
Right.
It's just because content, you can fit any content you want to, any structure. You can get lost. Most of the human dialogue, most of human conversation, it's not dialogue. Dialogue happens between free people who are totally equal. Dialogue is not a lecture where one knows and he passes the knowledge away. We don't lack knowledge. We're in a state of total abundance of knowledge. It won't take you anywhere.
Yeah.
We lack mental freedom.
Yeah.
That's what we lack, and that's what the most strong biblical message. So structural things can get you closer to truth, and only structural things. And you can talk about structural things only when you have dialogue. Truly make some kind of deep observation through dialogue.
Yeah. An exchange.
I don't think you can do anything else in this situation. I think.
So do you see that prayer has a?
If I gather 50,000 people and make a rock performance, it's nice, but I won't do it.
So do you see like dialogue with people who dialogue with God? Do you feel like they're wasting their time, or they're just deluding themselves?
Depending if the God is within, and the God is the way we talk about God. It's just a way of saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay, but if it's God that it's outside of me, it's idolatry.
Yeah.
This cousin of mine, he's a Talmudic scholar, and he worked very hard. Now he's retired, and his creme de la creme is learning one page of Talmud a day, and he's in heaven from that.
Okay.
And there's a commentary that's relatively close to the way that I think 19th century commentary, German Jewish commentary on the Bible, that he has his books in his house, my cousin.
Yeah.
And I told him, an exterior God, I am God, I say. He says, well, you God, you're going to slap me in the face. And I said, yeah, I'm God. You're God. And it says so in the Bible. I said, open up the book in your house and it'll show you that when you deal with a God that is exterior, anything exterior is idol worship. Yeah. And he says that in the book, okay? My cousin opened, I am closed. No, that's not the interesting part of him.
Another example of someone wishing to remain blind.
You can't do anything.
Yeah.
And that's okay, and I love him. My sister's friends, he lives in the West Bank, where my family was always left wing. When I was into politics, very long time ago, I was left wing. But today it looks all as rubbish. But so my sisters were very offended by the fact that their cousin goes and lives and settles in the West Bank. It's so violent. It's so he's my cousin, I love him. What? And then they stop visiting him and stop talking to him even for a certain time.
Yeah. It's a shame. Yeah, I mean, we have to recognize, I guess, not everybody wants the truth. Not everybody, people say they want the truth, or people...
You're very good in understatements.
I know, I like to start with the obvious, make the obvious statements. But
if you take seriously what you're talking, it's very obvious that people, the last thing they're interested in, despite what they might say, is truth.